Welcome to Shorty's SuperCoach and welcome to Shorty's hype session. Well, not quite. I've got the Labor Day weekend in party, so I was just getting a little bit of hype about me. Not a bad little doco, this one too. Every heartbeat's true, not too bad. Yes, we're 12:30 on the Sunday. Got the day off today, swapped it. Beautiful. Monday off, how tasty is that? So it's just the calm before the storm, before Shorty. I've still got to get ready and get stuck into it, but got the pineapple juice in the fridge, the Malibu at the ready. Things could get relatively dangerous. So, but I also thought, hey, Shorty, you got a bit of time on your hands, why don't you just stop the hype sesh for a moment and just give me 10 to 15 minutes of your best. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to look at the rucks. I've got stacks of videos coming left, right and centre. They're coming at me ass at the moment. Multiple videos per day. Did I miss time how many I wanted to do with the days that were left to the start of the season? Perhaps. Nonetheless, we're here. We're getting stuck into it. So we are going to talk about the rucks today, like I said, and just every relevant ruck. If you're wondering what I mean by that, if they're in at least 2% of sides, then I'm talking about them. So I just wanted to give it an opportunity. So basically, any bloke you've ever thought of, if you're out there and you're like, gee, Shorty hasn't talked about this guy, but he's in 3% of teams and I'd love to know what he thinks, I should cover it here. I've done it for every other position. I think they're all out by now, depending when I get stuck into it and upload them. But yeah, otherwise, we've got team reveals coming up. We've got footy tipping competitions you can join. We've got the SuperCoach group. If you missed out a league, I'm sorry. I try to do my best to spread them out on different times, and I really hope everyone who really wanted to got in, but obviously that might be tough. So if you missed out, there is a Shorty SuperCoach group that you can join to just be involved in some way, shape or form. Like I said in the video the other day, what I'll be doing, what I hope to do, is just to give a bit more purpose to these leagues, is the winner of each Shorty league will get the opportunity to be in a draft with me next year. And then I'll fill out that draft with probably the footy tipping comp winner. And if I have 4 more spots to fill, I'll just do the top scorers from the group. So it gives a bit more incentive. I'm not really sure the logistics of how I go about doing that and contacting people and getting them involved. But I think previous years it's just been like, oh yeah, you're in a Shorty league, cool. And then not much really happens from there. So hopefully this can give a bit of purpose to the league. So let's get stuck into it. Max Gawn has quickly risen to the most popular ruckman in the competition. And I think a month or two ago we were all thinking, oh gee, the rise of Luke Jackson, he could be very dangerous and potentially impactful on Gawn's scores. But we haven't seen that. Pracky game number 1 didn't seem it. Pracky game number 2 definitely quashed it. There was some sharing of the ruck, of course, but he just finds ways to score points. Floats back, intercept marks, and he links up as a pure ruck as good as any. There are some ruckmen out there that do rely heavily on a high hit-out count and getting in amongst it, but Gawn has multiple avenues to score points. That's what makes him a superstar. So I think the set and forget ruck options of Gawn and Grundy are back in vain. We maybe thought they were going to drop off, but they are very popular once again. Sean Darcy's ownership has gone in reverse, and that's fair enough. I was a massive fan of Darcy, and there was a lot of discussion, okay, Gawn and Jackson, there might be a slight drop-off. Darcy, the rise, the new man, he could be our guy. I think we all wanted to see it, but we just didn't. So he's had niggles and injuries, and he's had that over his history and career anyway. And then he's had some hand issues and I think Achilles. As soon as I read Achilles niggle, I start to go, oh shit, with a big fella like that. So I think we're all hoping that he could have been part of our set and forget department, but you just got to weigh up the risks. Gawn looks fit and firing. Darcy's played a half a footy, a good half at that, but I just think you'd be kicking yourself if you started with Darcy and then he went down in the first 5 weeks, because things will be unlucky. You'll cop some misfortune throughout the year anyway. So if we can avoid things that we already know that could blow up in our face, like starting guys who aren't at peak fitness perhaps, or could potentially start slow. I think for you guys out there who might be going mid-priced option for your ruck too, you might be hoping Darcy starts slow and you can launch at him at a lower price at some stage. Nic Nat, all I'd say for him is he's a superstar, going to average really well. He loves taking it out of the ruck and banging it forward, getting plenty of clearances like that. But I know last year, and let's look at his numbers. I know often the criticism has been that, he's a bit injury prone, and then last year he comes out and plays, I think it was 22 games, but so there you go, 22 games, but prior to that, 16, 3, 15, 15, and again, he's just another year older. He'll be 32 very soon. I just don't think we can go with him. He's going to score great when he's out there, but there has to be a genuine possibility that he starts to miss quite a few more matches. I know last year wasn't a good example, but I'd tread with caution, just personally. But he's in 4% of teams. Brodie Grundy, I think, is been the lock for most teams for most of the pre-season, and nothing changes. He has struggled in the bubble and the hub system. It just was well documented that it didn't sit well with him. He really struggled with it, and I don't blame him. It would have been difficult. Some handle it different and better to others. But he's out of that. Life's a bit more normal. He looks like he's raring to go, get back to his very, very best. I know his SuperCoach numbers didn't drop off drastically, but I feel like his football performance did, and I can definitely see him averaging over 120 again this year, and I think he's a really simple pick. And then we get into this section of, the way I see the ruck is there's three big guys, Darcy, Gawn, and Grundy, and you're going to need two of them at some stage of the year. Whether you start with two, you look to pick one up that falls. The issue with starting, say, a Marshall and O'Brien and a few guys that we'll see as we keep scrolling, is they're really good players, and they'll average really good numbers. But the way I look at it is if, say, your rucks are set and forget, or they're finished by round 8, or whatever you want to do. Actually, let's say you start Marshall and Gawn, and your mate starts Gawn and Grundy. Let's just, for example. All three guys going to average great numbers, but what you'll get is, say, with Gawn versus Marshall, is Gawn goes out, averages 122. Marshall has a great year, averages 104. Fantastic, that's awesome. But what you've got to equate is that you're actually losing 18 points every week. So your premium, because he's not in that big three, you're actually losing points to your mate, even though you're keeping the same guy for the whole year. He's a good player, averaged 104. But this is what we sort of talk about when you talk about the top echelon of guys in each position. It's a bit like falling short with it's not as obvious in the midfield because there's so many contributors, but I think if you played out 18 points every week against your mate across the whole year, that's going to add up to quite a few points, quite a few rankings. So that's just something to consider for the next tier of rucks. So Rowan Marshall, let's talk about him. I do think he's a really good option. I think he is a fantastic option if he's rucking solo. We saw some massive numbers with him just doing the rucking on his own late in the year. I think there was 150 in there and that type of thing. Ryder might be touch and go for round 1, but I just think you're going to get, an average just below 100 or just over 100. So I think he's going to average well, but he's going to be off the real top guys. So that's about all I'd say. If Ryder went down with a real long-term injury, he could get back to that, because he averaged 110 at some stage in his career, I think, and that might have been when he was largely number one ruck, I believe. Yeah, so average 110 back there. He's definitely underpriced because he did have, an injury interruption game in round 9, and you see some of those back-end scores towards the end of the year. I think most of those were rucking solo. Just such a mobile, ground-level sort of ruckman. Reilly O'Brien, much the same. As honest as the day is long. He's going to be a really good option, particularly for draft. But it's much the same. I don't think he has the ceiling like some other guys. He's going to average, between 95, 100 odd. But he's going to inevitably fall well short of the big three. And therefore, if you keep him all year and your friend has Gawn and Grundy or Darcy and Grundy after Darcy falls, whatever it might be, you're going to fall short. So it's just something to consider. I'm not bagging them out as players, but just in terms of selections, I think you'll fall a bit short. The Big O. Now, Oscar McInerney, 2% of teams. I think he'll take his game to a sort of another level. I sort of talk about Andy Brayshaw, how it hasn't been like an explosion. He's taken his game from 101 to 107, and now I think he could take it to 111 sort of thing. I sort of feel similar with Big O. It hasn't been sort of one dramatic increase in his average, but I feel like he could climb a few more steps this year and take that average up into the high 90s. But inevitably, I just don't think he's sort of the guy that we should start with, much like the other guys I just mentioned before. I don't see any reason why Ben McAvoy should be in 2% of teams. Tim English I spoke of much more in the forwards video, so I won't double up and try and keep these videos as concise as I possibly can. They'll be time-stamped. You guys probably know that already, but if you're new to the channel, new to the video, these longer style videos, I always look to timestamp them to some extent, so you're not sort of trawling through and wasting your time, and you can just sort of pop in and pop out and watch what you need to watch and get the info that you need to get. So feel free to check out the English discussion a bit more in my forwards video. Sam Draper. Look, I think I'm a big fan of Draper, and his upside is massive. Number one ruck at such a young age. His athleticism is crucial. You got to love the cult figure attitude that he's got. He's got the mullet, he's a real get-around-me sort of guy. He just showed us next to nothing, though, in the pre-season in terms of SuperCoach. Like, he played some decent footy in that, and I think as an Essendon fan, you'd be really optimistic about him leading you there. But I was thinking about him pre-season, but then I thought, you got to show me something, mate. And he didn't. So, for me, I just think last year I started with him. I was hoping for a bit of an increase last year. It wouldn't shock me if he took that average of 72 up to somewhere in the mid to high 90s. Wouldn't shock me. That's a really good return, and that might be enough for you. But there is a chance that he just stagnates, and I think it's always important to look at when you're picking a mid-price guy and you're hoping for a really good, first 6 to 8 weeks. It's important to just kind of have a suss of who they play, and I think Jarrod Witts might have been a good example of that. Nothing too crazy in terms of the Cats, but I remember looking. Yeah, there it is. So just worth considering. Round 3 takes on Gawn. Round 4 takes on O'Brien. Round 5 takes on Darcy. Round 6 takes on Grundy, and then it's that's a tough first 6. Basically you're hitting the big 3 rucks in the first 6 weeks. So that might be something to consider. Luke Jackson I touch on in the forwards discussion. Jarrod Witts, 11% of teams. I feel like Jarrod Witts may have been similar. Now, my thoughts on Witts is that he looked really good in the half that he played. Is it enough to make you go, let's go with him? I'm not sure it is. I'm probably a bit hesitant to start him just off a half a footy. So he takes on Nic Nat first up, Gawn second up. Giants, nothing too scary. Carlton, nothing too scary. St Kilda. So look, okay. He's got Grundy in round 7, I think that is. So nothing crazy. Like, it's not a disastrous 6 weeks, but he does have a really tough first 2 weeks getting back into footy after he's missed so much of it. I think a fit and firing Jarrod Witts is going to be really, really consistent for you, really honest. There's no issues about him averaging in the early 90s. I probably think off the back of such a long period of time out of the game, I'd probably see him averaging more in that lower 90s category. But that might be enough to be a stepping stone. But again, there has to be a fair amount of risk attached to this one because he has missed so much footy. So like you sort of see with my ruck setup, and you would have seen it before, I definitely am opting to go with set and forget, which is something I haven't done in previous years, and it's bitten me on the arse many, many times. So I'm trying to climb up those ranks again. So doing the same thing that's failed me recently would be pretty stupid. So I'm going to change it up. Callum Sinclair, 2% of teams. Not too interested in that one. Not interested at all, actually. And I think, we can really start to scroll through the most part. I mean, the rucks is always going to be a smaller discussion. And it probably gets us to Max Lynch. And I think for much of the preseason, it was Lynch versus Preuss. And it always seemed like Preuss was the one that was a bit more preferred. And then Lynch, hasn't really done anything to suggest you got to pick me. And that's represented in those figures there with just 2% of teams. And isn't it funny? Braydon Preuss, it's crazy. We talk about him for months and months and look at the setup and wonder how it could play out. And is he fit? Is he the number one guy? This and that. Then he goes and gets himself suspended for round one. Doesn't even matter. So he's in still 20% of sides. But, I think by the time the first ball bounces, that really won't be much of a discussion. And in the end, it might be a bullet dodged for many of us. But, yeah, we'll have to wait and see. I think he's got massive upside, but the more I thought about it, the more I felt Leon Cameron's philosophy and Flynn was sort of starting as the main guy, at least at the first bounce, just had me more and more worried as the days went on. I think that could be just about all. I try to not sort of discuss too much in terms of the rookies, but because it doesn't take too long for the rucks, I think Hayes is definitely going to be a good option, and have a suss of how the Eagles sort of line up in terms of Williams. I think that could be interesting with Oscar Allen going down. But look, I feel like Hayes and Hugh Dixon will probably be the guys. Obviously, Lukey Strandecker, is that how you say the name? Far out, it's a mouthful. Obviously just got put onto the list recently. Tommy Joyce, I'm pretty sure it's Tom. I think he could be one of our number one rookies. So get Joyce in. I think he'll play regular midfield minutes for the Eagles, and I think he could average somewhere in the 80s. There's a little bit of a call. Get him into the side. But yeah, I think most of us will probably go with one of those 102 guys in the ruck department at R3. So yeah, thanks again for everyone who's tuned in. And how observant are we? Who saw the Paddy Dow was sitting at my M5? Who saw that? I just took that in and I thought, I'll just take a little bit of piss today. It's a hype day. It's a long weekend. Shorty's having a bit of fun. I thought I'd just take a little bit of the piss. But nah, obviously, don't lose too much respect for me. That's a gag. Get him out of there. PTSD. Paddy Dow. Far out. Get him out of there. I can't remember even what I did. But anyway, we'll deal with that off camera. So thanks again for all your support. I cracked the 3,000 mark just last week. The last week has been massive for subs. So I really do appreciate it. Seeing that sub count go up and the views, be really, really good is just something that makes me go, awesome. That's really good encouragement for me to keep doing it. I've always said I don't do it for the views and the subs. I do it because I love it. But of course, we like it when it does start to, get a bit of traction, and it makes me feel good. It makes me feel like, you guys are really engaged out there. So I really do appreciate it. I was really chuffed when I cracked that 3K, because I know it's small in like the YouTube world, but is something that probably for a couple of years I thought, wow, that'd be great to crack through that. So onwards and upwards to bigger and better things. And like I always say, if you've been part of my channel, subscribe for 4 days, 4 weeks, or 4 years. I appreciate you all. So it'd be great to chat to you all soon through the comments and live sessions, which we've got coming up on a weekly basis. So we'll be back. Like I said, lots of videos throughout the next few days as we lead up to round one. So I'm looking forward to that. It'll be just nice to lock and load a team and get stuck into it. So much appreciated as always, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Cheers.